Welcome, guys, to another fun episode of FemFlex Friday. I'm Whitney Jones here with my co-host Linda Murray, the one and only. And we have someone super exciting and fun on this show. She is an IFBB Bikini Pro, Abbi Gaetano. Not only is she an athlete, but she's also a coach. So, Abbi, welcome.
Thank you.
We have tons of questions for you because you've got so much experience on stage as well as behind the scenes as a coach. And this episode, we want to focus on kind of myths and how to start a prep. There's a lot of athletes who are trying to do it on their own, who may not have any guidance. So want to give tips on that, as well as kind of help guide people who may be struggling, questioning what they're doing, whether they have a coach or not. But let's first start, because you're no stranger to the stage and you've done very well. And more importantly, you didn't start this journey in our sport when you were in your 20s. So give us some background.
So I went to a local show in Utah to watch a friend compete for the first time. And I watched her go out and I thought, I want to try it. I mean, I've always been into the gym. I always loved fitness. And so I did one show, and then one show led to another, and then 25 shows later, here I am. And now I'm coaching. So I've really found love for the sport, and I love it all. So.
And 25 years, and it's not like you've been doing this for 25 years.
No, 25 shows later.
25 shows later, but yeah, it's multiple shows a year, and you're still loving it, enjoying the ride.
I do. And now being on the other side and helping coaching and helping women, hit their goals is just, I think it's just as empowering to do that as it is for myself to be on stage. So,
which is a great thing to hear as a coach, because we do find both of us being promoters, we see athletes backstage who show up and they're just, it's deer in headlights because they didn't realize there's so many things that go into it, and it's not just about stepping on the stage, it's that prep. So let's talk first about, for anyone, because now we're at the beginning of the season, people are just now starting to go, oh, I want to do a show. And that's typically maybe 12, 16 weeks out, sometimes longer. Obviously, everyone's different. But one of the first things that we always say is you've got to go in with the right mindset as an athlete.
That's right.
So when people say that, what do they mean? Or what do you mean? How do you coach your athletes on mindset when starting a prep?
So you want to list your goals and what, you want to be firm with them, but have a little bend too, because progress is great. And a lot of athletes get in their head that it's never enough. And that's not true. And that's why you hire a coach, to help you through those hard times and to help you see the good that's come out of, each step that you go through. When you start a prep, you actually want to, we always at Pro Physiques try to do like a reverse diet first, because a lot of women don't eat enough and they want to jump on stage and there's no room to wiggle because they're not eating enough. So then we have to explain how we do that. Let's start you out with a reverse diet. Build your calories up first before we start an actual prep, where you aren't doing as much cardio or, so we can build your calorie intake up. And then, there's some women that come over from other teams that are on strict, calorie intake. And we really try to push a reverse as well. Like, let's get you reversing, get your head right, and in a good space to actually start a prep.
Yeah. So with the whole thing with like mindset and taking on that competitor, what's the time frame? Like, do you prefer like having them like a year out so you can have this? Because there's so much more to than like that 16 weeks and being at that place where you are actually on the diet, and that's a lot.
Yeah, and it honestly depends on the athlete. Sometimes we get girls that are good in a calorie intake, but their head's not right.
Right.
and
Right.
they've been lean for so long, and they to put a layer on to change your physique for better really messes with a lot of women's heads. So we try to work with them through that. Putting a time frame on it is hard just because every athlete is so different.
Yeah. But man, mindset is so important. Like, to me, it's everything. It's like really the foundation. And I know going way back when I would work with clients, not those that were competing, but it was always like, people want to just like jump in quick. They want to start exercising. They want the diet. And it's really about, okay, like what's going on inside of you, because that's the foundation. And when you get that right, then everything else is pretty
it just
smooth.
stacks and
when you're
goes
doing
smooth.
it for the right reason.
Yes.
And you're not trying to run away or, disguise or mask some issue that you're trying to not deal with. But a lot of times people do get into this sport because maybe they had a breakup or divorce or lost a job, and they just need something positive.
And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And something they can control.
Yeah.
Because they can't, nobody can take that from you, right? Like, it's yours and yours alone. Like, I have 3 kids, and I got into this sport when I was 36 years old. And I hit a time in my life where I needed to do something for me and something that made me happy. And, I didn't know at the time it was going to be bodybuilding, but it's changed my life. And I actually, my kids have a respect for it because they know, if mom's happy, everybody's happy, right?
Yep.
So it's my go-to. And I love spending the time in the gym. So mentally for me, it's really helped. So I think that's really important to have your own thing.
Yeah. So in regards to cardio, because you kind of briefly mentioned, clients will come and they're just doing a large amount of cardio right from the get-go and they're ready to start prep. So what's kind of a gauge just for someone who may not have even done a prep yet? When you say too much cardio, where's that kind of that ballpark approximate of too much when you're trying to start a prep?
When you're trying to start, too much is like going to classes at the gym every day, spending a few hours a day. When I first started, I was doing a couple classes a day, so I had to really cut back. So like 90 minutes is a lot. Even an hour is too much when you're starting a prep.
Within that day, you're saying, total, that 1 hour.
Yes. Yeah, you want to start, if you are doing a lot, you want to start tapering that back. Don't cut it off completely right in the beginning, but slowly cut back so your body gets used to it and acclimated, and then just continue to drop back. And then when prep starts, then, add 30 minutes, every other day, or, steady state cardio. There's HIIT cardio that comes into play too that works great, like 15 minutes of HIIT.
Because you're right, 16 weeks out, if they're doing an hour and a half of cardio every day, people don't realize, like, where do we pull from?
That's
so you're
right.
16
Where's
weeks
the
out,
room?
At 12 weeks out, you're doing 2 hours of cardio. Where are you going to be at a month out?
Right.
Like, no one has that kind of time.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not healthy. So, it's good to have these gauge to say, okay, well, we've got to back it out. And I love the whole aspect. Yes, reverse dieting. It seems still like a very foreign concept, but essentially it's trying to kind of back out and find a good solid baseline before you start trying to cut calories. And when you are at a good place, it's almost like you find, hey, you don't have to go to those extremes that you already had in the previous preps or experiences.
Yeah. So do you guys like strategically place the cardio? Like, once you get to a place, like, do you do, like, say, okay, when you first wake up in the morning, do cardio before you eat your first meal, or?
Yeah, some athletes we have do fasted cardio in the morning. And then, after their training session, their lifting session, then they can do a post-workout. Usually steady state, it totally depends on the athlete.
Depends on the athlete.
And what look we need from them.
Okay.
Yes.
And also the type of cardio, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So.
Yeah.
Now, regarding for coaches, if you have a coach, it's usually that banter back and forth to go, okay, let's come together and figure out that show season. So what's your philosophy in regards to working with your clients to plan out their show season for the next year?
So I always like to, do a first warm up, if it's close to home, because then it's less expensive. I mean, shows are very expensive. You've travel expenses, hotel, makeup, everything. If you choose to do your own makeup, great. But there's a lot of expenses. And up front with Pro Physiques, we always like to give them a rundown of, what will be expected. I think that's very important up front to give to your clients, to show like where your money's going to be going, because you have to plan. You have to plan ahead.
I love that. Very strategic. So, as far as like the number of shows, like if you have a newbie that's in and she's been there working with you for a year, and you get the mindset right, gauge her cardio and the calories. Do you say, like, if they say, I want to go in the nationals, because it seems like with like social media, like a lot of they pick like big shows, and so do you help them, bring them, reel them back in?
Oh yeah, we feel like they need to place well in the NPC at a local show, and do a few local or close to home shows, and see where you stack up, and then look at the national level athletes. And you might need to take another little off season to build more, because a lot of the national girls are more muscular than local. So it's timing. And yeah.
Now, you mentioned too, as you're a mom, so for women who are getting into this sport, what advice do you give them when they say, I have a full-time job, I'm a full-time mom, how on earth am I ever going to do this sport? Besides saying, come on now. What kind of tips do you give them?
If you want to go into it, you're either all or nothing, and you can have as many excuses as you want. But if this is something you really want, then you will find the time. So that's what I tell them.
Yeah, and there's so much truth in it.
Yeah.
Depending, you as a coach can't want it for them. They have to want it themselves, because they're the ones who are doing all the work and putting in that effort. So we have a lot of questions for you, because you're just this wealth of information. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with Abbi and drilling her with very intense topics. And we're back with Abbi Gaetano, IFBB Bikini Pro and coach. And we are just going head to head with all these questions regarding her own prep, and more importantly, as a coach, to help guide all of you on some of the frequently asked questions that athletes are always throwing at her. So we talked about a ton of little intricate details already, but one of the most important things that I feel people need to understand is what a normal routine is like when you're in prep. So can you speak from an athlete yourself, as well as what you guide your own clients to do in regards to what does a normal day look like when you're in prep?
Sleep, sleep, sleep. I can't stress the importance of sleep. Get your sleep. That's number one. Water intake. Make sure you're drinking your water every day. That's another huge one. Body work. That is a really important one that a lot of girls don't do. Spending time rolling out your body, making sure your muscles are loose, taking care of yourself. Epsom salt baths, ice bathing, weekly. All of those things to just make your body even better. Taking care of your skin, skin care. Because when you drop weight, especially as a master's pro, your skin isn't the same as it used to be. So you want to make sure you're taking really good care of your skin and have a good skin regimen.
And then what about like routine-wise in regards to stretching, how many times you're doing cardio in a week, workout, flexibility, like what is it like in a routine for, again, yourself as well as athletes?
So first thing in the morning, I like to wake up. I take my BCAAs while I do 25 minutes of my cardio, and then I will have my meal one, and then wait a little bit, go, some people have two to three meals in before they go back to the gym, and then I go back and weight train, and that's usually, now that I've been in it long enough and I have a good base, about 45 minutes spent, and then I'll do an extra set of cardio post-workout. And then during that whole time, I'm drinking my water. I try and hit like a half a gallon of my water towards noon. So I even it out, so I'm not guzzling at the end of the day because I don't get my whole gallon in. Usually I drink more than a gallon when it's time to prep and, things are getting serious. And then at night, I usually do an ice bath just to let your muscles, come down, the inflammation, and then have my last meal by 7 o'clock, and then wind down, be in bed by 9. My kids know that my bedtime. Whitney knows.
I know. Don't text Abby after 9. You'll get crickets.
Wow, yeah. And
So,
a mom of 3.
I am a mom of 3.
Wow.
So I mean, they're all older, but
Amazing kids, though.
yeah, they're good kids.
Yeah. What's so important in what you're saying is you're talking about planning and being organized. And that also really contributes to the health of the competitor.
Absolutely.
And you can just hear just how important it is. I mean, I just can't stress enough. I mean, you made a comment about you don't need to, like with the water, and you said you're scheduled to drink enough amount of water, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're guzzling water.
Yeah.
So that's the same.
Then you're up all night.
Yeah, right. And it's really the same that what we hear from some of the other competitors. You can't there shouldn't be a situation where you're trying to fix something. Just try to stay consistent, have a plan, and that goes along with if you were scheduled to do cardio and you can't all of a sudden
Jam it
all in.
Because out here it's crazy, right? Here we can control everything. And you just have to get your mind right.
Yeah.
Calm down. I mean, you have control of this. It's all you're doing. Out here you can't control, but yeah.
So talking about controlling things, we obviously see in our sport a lot of comparison, especially with social media.
The number
What
one
advice do you have, and give us some insight into what you see about the comparisons that athletes do with one another?
Compare physiques, which we're all different.
Yes.
We all have our good points and our bad points, and you know how to tweak it to not show your bad points as athletes. And the more you do it, the better you get. So all you're seeing is everybody's fabulous photos. My suggestion is if you get feeling down on yourself and comparing yourself to other athletes, is not unfollow them, but just mute. So you don't have that in your feed reminding you constantly. Because we're our worst critic already. We don't need outside influences to make it even heavier on our shoulders. And a lot of women do, and it's really sad, but that's just it's just how it is. And everybody has their good qualities.
Right.
It's a great point because, I mean, gosh, there's a lot of comparisons. And I was asked that question about social media and all that information out there. And
I couldn't imagine
I
being...
couldn't either.
No. Yeah. At
Being
least
young.
older, I feel like we know who we are. We're okay.
Yes, we do.
But
You're right.
Growing
These
up,
younger athletes that are comparing themselves every day to
Every
other
day.
athletes, I couldn't imagine that stress.
yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
Unnecessary
Yeah.
So unnecessary. Like, you're doing this for fun. It's supposed to be fun. Like, and you'll probably do better if you lighten the load that you put on yourself.
Yeah. Someone asked me that question, and I said, stick and move. Go in, I know posting is important, but you don't have to stay there. You don't have to live there. You don't read everything. Don't believe everything. So, yeah.
And live in the moment. Like, when you're at a show backstage, like, put your phone away and actually feel what you're feeling.
Wow.
I see so many girls, I mean, they're talking through their phone and they're not even living in the moment and realizing, like, you need to live in the moment and experience, like, I'm here.
It's one day.
It's one day and it goes so fast and you work so hard. Don't compare. Just live in the moment for yourself because that's why you did it in the first place.
Yep. And sometimes it's hard for them to slow down and really hear that because I didn't until later in life understand the importance of being present, and I see competitors on stage and I'm there as a spectator observing and I just look and I think, gosh, do you realize, recognize the joy, just the great place that you're at.
Yeah.
Like you get to compete,
in some amazing places too,
Totally.
on phenomenal
And
stages.
And meet amazing people.
Yeah.
Like some of my very best friends are in the fitness industry that I would have never met coming into it. Go into it with an open mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The first book I read when I first started competing was The Universe Has Your Back. And it helped me so much, just getting that mindset of,
There you
believe.
go. Nice little plug.
Wow,
Yeah.
universe has
So
your
who's
back.
the author? Do you remember offhand?
Gabrielle.
Universe Has Your Back.
Yeah,
So-
it's so good. Yeah, and I would just put my headphones in. I mean, even my coach would make fun of
Yeah.
He's like, are you listening to your book? Do you have your angel wings on? Because I'd tell him bits and pieces of this book. But yeah, it's just, you've got to be in the right mindset. That's first and most important.
It's an inside job.
And getting to that spot, obviously, we see a lot of the importance of support. Crew, team, family, friends. Not everybody has that,
Right.
which it's very difficult. But where do you see having that support system being the most crucial?
Leading up into a show where it's a roller coaster from your emotions, your emotions get the best, and one day you're here, and the next day you're here, and it's crazy how fast it can change for you. But I always like to turn to my athlete friends at that time because they've been through it. My family, they support me, but they really don't know what's going on. They support me, but yeah, it's just different.
Yeah.
But leading into a show, it's always good to have that support system for sure.
Great way to kind of help pull you out of a rough time.
Right.
But even so, even like these audiobooks and these books that people can resonate with that really touches them, go back to it. If there's ever anything that really sparks some motivation, there was a reason, dig that back out and go for it because you started the journey. We want to see everyone finish it, but it's never, rainbows and butterflies.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not that hard to do.
No.
And
Yeah.
the sport is hard.
It is.
Yeah.
So very rewarding, but find whatever it is that has motivated you or inspired you, and if you are lucky enough to have that support system, tap in. Tap in as often as you need to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll take a quick break and we will come back. And Abby, I'm going to ask you some questions let's talk about expectations. All right, we'll be back.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
And we are back with Abbi Gaetano, IFBB Bikini Pro and Coach. And we left off leading into talking about expectations. So many athletes have high expectations, but they don't exactly always match the reality. I'm sure you've seen this numerous times. Give us some insight into this expectations versus reality.
How much work is needed for this in this sport? It's a lot. It's a lot. And are you hitting your food on point? Are you doing as much as you can in the gym to make your physique better? Are you listening to your coach or the advice of others? Because in this sport, a lot of people have a lot to say.
They can be very confusing.
Very confusing. Are you listening to your coach? That is like huge. But expectations, that's why I always suggest going to a local show and getting the first one over with so you can see. Because, I mean, you set yourself up for failure if you go into a show thinking that you're just going to sweep it and you don't know who's going to show up that day.
Yeah.
So true.
So, yeah.
And it's also, it's hard too because sometimes people don't want to self-reflect. It's hard to look in the mirror and go, I really didn't give it everything I had.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy to do, but to really excel in this sport, you have to be able to call yourself out and realize your own BS, realize your own excuses, because if you're staying at the same every show and you're never increasing, your body's not changing, then really take the time to go, I probably could put in more.
Right.
Or if you're doing everything right and everything's staying, then maybe change things up. Maybe it's, your coach, your training, whatever needs a shock to your system.
Right, and be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Like, those weekly check-ins with your coach, if you're not being honest and upfront with them, they can't fix things. If something's wrong and something's off, like, you need to be honest with your coach and yourself.
Yeah.
That's actually a great point. Even if it's news that your coach does not want to hear, hey, I screwed up and I had a cheat meal, wasn't supposed to.
Or if you started on an antibiotic or something, you need to be you need to be upfront with everything. And or if you had a bad day or
stress. Yes.
All of those things factor in.
Oh, they definitely do. They definitely factor in. I would look and say, okay, I did the exact program in, at competition 1, and the next year, and I had different results.
Right.
Well, I was more stressed out. I had a lot of other things going on. And so, you have to take that into consideration.
All preps are different too.
They're
From
all
show
different.
to show.
From show to
you
show.
You can't do the same thing as you did before. Sometimes
Bodies
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So having your expectations too high is, of course you want to feel good and be confident, and make sure you're doing your part to feel confident, because that really does come across on stage.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
So let's talk about posing.
Yeah, the fun part.
The fun part, because that's your chance to kind of let your personality shine.
Yes.
And I know that people do not ever realize how hard it is.
They never do.
They work hard in the gym,
Absolutely.
but posing. So give advice on when you tell clients how far out to start, how frequently, what's your advice?
If you're a newbie and have never been to a show, I suggest you go and watch posing. You can tell immediately who picks up on it and who's practiced and who hasn't. I always tell them to start immediately watching videos, going online and watching not just pros, because their routines are a lot longer.
Sure, yeah.
But at the NPC level, go and watch and start working angles. Even though you're not lean and where you're going to be, just start moving your body, looking at yourself in the mirror, trying to get your body to move, and then we'll start working, on hitting your front pose, your back pose correctly, and bringing the best physique possible to the stage.
Yeah.
But it's number one, and I suggest you practice every day. Even still now.
Yeah.
Every day.
Oh, yes, because your body changes.
It does
so your
change.
posing changes. As it should.
And holding those poses, because you don't know how many girls are going to show up and how long you're going to have to hold that front pose. And you have to have the stamina to stand there on stage and have a smile on your face and everything else.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're not familiar with posing, reach out. There's posing coaches everywhere. But find one who knows how to pose your division. Again, we hear from a lot of athletes who, you know, maybe their coach is a male bodybuilder and they're a bikini athlete, and their coach is trying their best to pose them, but posing bikini res is not their forte.
Very different.
If you need help, there's so many resources out there. Find someone that you admire, you look up to, reach out to them, see if they do posing sessions. But if you're stuck or you're just kind of struggling with it, reach out for help.
Yeah, the posing is very different from division to division. Just even like I look at the wellness division and I look at how they're posing, and when they pose from the front and I can see their glute from the front and how they pop the quad, I'm like, wow, it's just how
so
each
different.
division has evolved, and the little small details make a huge difference.
And heels. I always suggest you wear your heels around, because a lot of girls are gym girls and they don't wear heels a lot. So I always suggest wearing your heels around the house while you're vacuuming, trying to get comfortable and look comfortable on stage, because you can tell a girl that knows how to wear heels and one that doesn't, and it sets them apart. And that makes a huge difference on stage.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with you. Sit there in the audience and we're preparing for FemFlex Friday to do a wrap up. And you're all pros. Everybody looks great, but then I start to look at the differences as far as your walk. She looks uncomfortable in her shoes. The shoes look like they're walking her. And I get lost. I'm just like, So,
or you'll even get women who wear heels every day for work. For whatever reason, they put on the posing heels and they're like horses. And clompity. And it's like, what just happened here? I see you walk into the gym every day and change, and you walk very well, like shoulders back, very confident. And then you put the heels on, and it's like, it's just something switches. We tend to overthink things. We're women.
Absolutely,
Sadly, we do that.
I'm impressed how you guys can like flex in heels. Like, so I've never had to do that, right?
Never had
and I just go, wow, that's so impressive.
It makes
just
it easier,
watch
I feel.
Well, you have to flex a lot. Bikini, you don't really
bikini
flex.
doesn't.
But Whitney.
But you're still like holding
for
that pose. I mean, like standing,
But again, it's like trying to pose like you do as a bodybuilder. That would be a joke to see me try to do that. There's no way. So we master our own division style of posing because you practice it, you know?
Yeah, practice.
You can't practice enough.
That's true. Very true. And you mentioned trust the process. Obviously, as a coach, that's what we always want our own clients or athletes to do. But there are some red flags, too, that I think people need to kind of pay attention to. And we always want to promote the health of the client. Can you give us some insight into some things that if anyone out there is listening to this and they go, oh my gosh, that's something I probably better pay attention to. What are some of the red flags where an athlete might need to ask more questions?
If their calories are too low, if they're doing 2 hours of cardio, if their coach isn't explaining to them why, there's a lot of whys. You need to, I mean, you always want to trust everything your coach says, but if you are questioning it, you need to reach out and ask questions and be open, have that open communication. Just don't say yes to everything. You know, if you feel like something's off, then there's probably something off and you probably should address it. But a good coach, you trust them, and you basically, you're in their hands, and you have to have that communication and relationship that you feel comfortable in turning that over to someone.
Yeah. And I think that trust the process means like when you're given a plan, you have to like follow the plan. And that means if she tells you to get to sleep, you get sleep. If she tells you to drink this amount of water, you have to drink the water. If she's telling you that she wants you to do cardio before your, first meal, and then you think, oh, well, I can like skate around this or do a little, and then you're not being honest. You're not trusting the process.
Right.
And you see it all the time.
Yes, sadly. Sadly. You have been such a wealth of knowledge and information, and so fun to have you on here speaking as an athlete and a coach. And we appreciate you joining us here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, that wraps up another episode of FemFlex Friday. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.